Bottom line, I think we as artists, whether you're Christian or not, and this is just my views as a Christian, and I don't think anybody else should have to have them, but we are made in the image of our Creator, and we should freely explore that. But we can explore anatomy without devolving into the depths of depravity. No, that's naughty. That's inappropriate. Holy crap. Dude, what are you doing? Holy molies. It seems to me that the modern art community, the modern art and creative community is extremely geared towards thirst bait art, or just, like borderline pornographic artwork. It's everywhere. It's in everything and everywhere. Like every website. If you look on like DeviantArt, oh my gosh, it is like a circus of debauchery. What it is. It's like the entire art world and the entire art community and the creative community has come completely debauched. Art, it's not art for art's sake. It's just boobs and booties. As a Christian artist, I struggle with this. This is something I've struggled with since a young age, in how to deal with being a creative person and how to deal with being drawn towards beauty and form and the elegance of the human body specifically, but doing it in a way that is appropriate. You know what I mean? Appropriate, and not just geared towards that kind of titular, voyeuristic, perverted way of trying to draw and portray people. Really, I have a theory about why artists are so drawn to that type of category, maybe of the allure or the attraction to drawing the figure, especially the human figure, the female figure, in provocative ways more than just in beautiful ways. To me, we're searching to recreate the image of our Creator, but we're looking through the lens of imposters. And let me explain. It really boils down to worshiping the creation as an object, worshiping people, worshiping the body, the form, especially the female form. And this is the most prevalent example that I can find of that kind of thirst bait art that's promulgating everything. It's everywhere, in all media, in all forms. And it's worshiping that form, the female form, women, as objects and solicitations of, indulgences of the flesh, versus seeing them as the people and the created beings that they really are. We are unique, we are imperfect as people, and I think there's this ideological pursuit of some mystical Athena-like qualities in everything that's out there, using sex to sell, using the allure and the attraction of the female body specifically, and more adamantly than most, to sell product, to sell whatever, to sell the movies, to sell the whatever you're going to sell, whatever it is in the creative industry. As a conservative artist, this is not meant to be just it is something I know that a lot of Christian artists struggle with, and Christian artists that I've talked to struggle with. There's this need to portray the beauty and the imagery of the body and the human and the female form and the male form and all its beauty and all its wonderful in all shapes and sizes, but to do it in an appropriate way, and to do it in a way that is honoring, that is uplifting, and not just indulging the lust of the flesh. So many people that I know of have struggled with this, and I personally have struggled with it, especially as a young man. And getting into art when you're beginning, especially when you're studying figure drawing, specifically, there's good ways to study figure and form, and it's important. It's a fundamental art discipline. If you're going to be an artist, you need to understand human anatomy, and you need to understand the form, and you need to understand the body, male and female. You need to understand them, how they move, the mechanics and the dynamics of musculature and skeletal structure and all these things. And really one of the best ways to do that is reference artwork. But as an artist, I've struggled, and as teaching, somebody who's teaching my youngsters now how to draw and trying to lay the foundation and the basics for them, I've struggled with where is the line, and how do I teach and approach that to give them the education they need, and youngsters, anybody I teach, but in an appropriate way, in a way that's uplifting, in a way that's that's not voyeuristic and perverse, but it is celebratory of the beauty of the human body. Let's jump into the canvas and explore this topic while I work on this drawing that I'm playing around with. Just messing around with this anime style drawing I came up with the other day, and it kind of brought this subject up for me while I was drawing. I was sketching out some ideas, and I worked through several ideas lately. Just, I get a canvas open and I'll just start fooling around to see what comes up. So not only as a married man, but as a father and as a Christian, somebody who is, dedicated, I guess you could say, a life towards living more conservative and respectful and in an honorable way towards just creation in general, or towards people. I struggle as an artist because there's a desire to draw the human form. That's let's just put a point on it. A lot of my drawing and artwork desire and style is geared towards drawing the human form, and especially women. I like drawing beautiful artwork. I like drawing beauty artwork, and I find women to be the more beautiful of the two genders, and so I kind of have always leaned towards that anime slash Disney-ish kind of style. And as a creative, I've had to work through my demons, a youngster growing up and being exposed to a lot of inappropriate things as a young artist and as a young man. And this is just not meant to be a life struggle story or anything, but just as a young man, I was exposed to a lot of things that you would consider to be inappropriate. I had kind of a tumultuous growing up. I had a tumultuous life, and there were members of my family and immediate circles who exposed me to things that were not healthy as a young man. I mean, just the exposure to pornographic content and stuff like that was really prevalent where I grew up, where around the family that I grew up in and around the men that I grew up around. So I struggled with that as a young man, seeing the human form, seeing women as objects to be desired. And I was also, an artist, and so I wanted to draw pictures. I wanted to draw images. I wanted to present my interpretation of the world through my imagery, but I didn't really know how to do that appropriately. And so my explorations as a young artist were probably not what I would call the healthiest, and not something I ever wanted my children to go through and experience or be exposed to in the ways that I was. So I had to, as a grown-up, explore that and okay, well, where does this come from, and how do I do this in a more appropriate way to where I'm being honoring to myself and to creation and to my gifts and talents as an artist and my desires as a person. Getting married helped, in that I started to learn. Once I was married, I started to learn a better, healthier way of looking at things and approaching things through the patience and understanding of my wife, because some lines you don't really know you're crossing until you've crossed them, or until somebody comes along and says, hey, that's not the best way to be a representation of an artist that calls himself a Christian, calls himself conservative, calls himself. I don't believe there's any wrong in exploring the form, the human form. I don't believe there's any wrong in exploring artwork for art's sake, and imagery like the form for art's sake. I think it's a beautiful and wonderful thing, and it's a good way to honor creation and to honor beauty on the earth and to honor all those things. But there's got to be an appropriate way to do it. There's got to be a way that's doesn't just seem right to you because you want it to be okay or you justified it, but there is a way to say, hey, like, drawing. And I had this conversation with my son the other day. He's in his mermaid phase, we'll call it. He's discovered mermaids. My oldest son, he's 13 years old, and he's just getting to that age where it's like, okay, this is going to be a subject we need to talk about, and we need to talk about it openly. We need to talk about it, frankly. And I need to help guide him through this as an artist. How are you going to portray what you draw appropriately? Now, most of the time, it's not an issue. Drawing samurai and warriors and stuff like that, and just things that are just fun and dynamic for young boys to draw occasionally. And in our teaching, anatomy comes up, and especially female anatomy, comes up. He's, like I said, 13, so some doors are opening, whether you want them to or not. As a parent, they're coming open. Like you're in that phase of life now, and you just had to accept it. Like, okay, this is just, puberty hits like a ton of bricks sometimes, and so you gotta jump in there and be proactive as a parent, not just as an artist, but as a parent, and be like, okay, well, this is normal. These, noticing that there is an opposite sex to you is completely normal. And noticing that they have very attractive and appealing qualities different to yours is completely normal. And there's a healthy way to appreciate and see that, not just as an artist, but as a young man. And that's what I intend to grow my children as, young men, not boys. Not boys out to just satisfy themselves and their own lusts using other people to do it. Some of my bigger advice would be, pick your reference wisely. Pick your reference sources wisely. You can find good anatomy reference without it having to be full-blown, all-out, provocative nudity, just trying to be as nude as possible with as much provocative posturing as possible. You know what I mean? Like some of the artwork or some of the art packs out there, like the reference packs or whatever you can find, they're just provocative for provocative sake. And there's some people who just want to draw that, and that's great. And if that's your game, go for it. That's all you. But if you're like me, a Christian artist or a conservative type of person looking to kind of rein in that voyeuristic mindset and become appropriate in your art, or portray yourself more appropriately as an artist, then you're going to have to look a little deeper for some more appropriate reference. That's really what it boils down to. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Let's get this right out in the open. These things exist in the female form. This is different than men. This is different than men. This is different than men. And there's other parts that are different. And there's a very specific way to draw them so that they look real, they look attractive, appealing, or proportional, or whatever you're going for. And you're going to have to find the appropriate ways to not just draw them shapely and nice, and draw the different aspects that make the female form so beautiful and attractive, but do it in a way that's uplifting. Let's do it in a way that's attractive and honoring at the same time. I call it the Disney method. You look at Disney, old Disney, not modern pervert Disney, but old Disney. If you look at old Disney, the Disney princesses and stuff like that, they had a really good way of drawing the basics and the foundation that was attractive and there, so you know what this character is, but it's not, like DeviantArt. It's nothing like that. That's what you have to find. DeviantArt is like the Thunderdome. It's the simplest way to put it. And then there's the fine art method. If you look at the fine artists back in the day, Michelangelo and all them, they were masterful at drawing the human form. But they didn't draw it all just for nudity's sake. Even Botticelli, Botticelli with the Venus and stuff like that, had this idyllic body type they're trying to portray through this artwork. It wasn't just about that. It wasn't just about, hey, here's a titular picture to make people go crazy. A lot of this balance you're gonna have to find for yourself, but it's always interesting when I get into a picture like this. Here we go. We're working in this area. We're gonna go ahead and work this in a way that tells the story without idolizing it. That's a really good, actually, tell the story, make the image or whatever without it becoming an idol. Yeah, see, that works. That works out. I've been watching the old Gundam Seed, and there's a couple of characters in the part when they get to Earth that are just like this desert warrior type of thing going on. And this one character, Kagili, I think her name is Kagili. This is kind of not really her, but loosely inspired by like this desert rat warrior type of thing. And I've got some reference I need to bring in for the pistol, and I'll carry on with this. Trying to find these folds here, man. Need some reference. You gotta be careful what you Google too. My gosh. Some of that stuff you Google and you're just like, are you really? Just things that seem innocent and seem like you're not purposefully going to look for things that are wild or out of out in that kind of in that category of pornographic material or whatever. You just Google the simplest things and it's like, good Lord. I've heard this quote one time. I can't remember who said it, but the moment you want to corrupt the innocence of your child, especially the young men, put a phone in their hand with the internet. And that is the moment you will lose their innocence. That is the moment they will lose. Thank you so much for joining me again. This is kind of a heavy topic. Try not to hit too much Bible thumping, like that. I'm not that kind of guy. It's a very important topic, and I think a lot of artists can struggle with it. Even if you're not Christian artists or conservatives, or conservative leaning type of person, you can struggle with it as an artist. Where is it appropriate? I mean, if you go on places like DeviantArt, it's very obvious very quickly. There's almost none appropriate content on sites like that. They are complete voyeuristic, pervert platforms. That's it. That's what they are. It's a disservice. It's a disservice to the art community, and it's disheartening as an artist who maybe wants to portray beauty and form without having to be titular about it to be popular, without having to be, overtly, seductive and provocative in your artwork to be popular. Because the more popular sites that you see out there, and the more popular YouTube channels and artists on the internet kind of centralize on that kind of stuff. A lot of them do. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And that's what kind of sells their brand, is that provocative female sell. That's what gets them their name. That's what gets them their work and stuff like that. And I know so many people, Christian or not, that have struggled with this, and they don't want to be those type of artists, but they don't know where to draw the line, especially when it comes to drawing and exploring the human form. And so I hope that this gives you something to think about this video today, and just, I think it's a mindset. I think more than anything, a black and white of, oh, this is evil, this is good, this is bad, this is wrong. There are some things that are very obviously wrong, but finding a balance of exploring the heart and exploring the beauty in the form, and keeping the mindset of people not as objects, but as created individuals with their own heart, personality, and character. Even if it's a fantasy character that you're making up, somebody you're completely making up, and you're just using art reference to do it, look at that image as a presentation of a created individual, not just an object. That's my advice, especially for creative artists that are maybe in the Christian community, Christian circles, or conservative type of artists, or people who lean more towards that way versus the other side of things, which there is another side of things. And there's an entire world dedicated to that type of artwork, and the people who live and relish and, thrive in that environment and that type of art, and that's what they've ethically or morally chosen for themselves, and that's their right, and that's their prerogative. Honestly, if that's the lifestyle and the artwork and the portrayal of themselves as an artist they want, good on you. Go do your thing. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna tell another artist how they can or can't draw. This is really just a message for people like me, maybe creatives, individuals with young artists they're trying to teach, and finding ways to teach the form, teach anatomy, teach representation of beauty, but in a way that is honoring, respectful, and uplifting, versus just voyeuristic, perverse, or titillating. All right, thank y'all for joining me again. Have a blessed day, and I will catch you on the next one.